we are going to start with a little bit of an explainer. NFL draft props are relatively new insofar that they really started taking off when sports gambling became legal in individual states, but they're not legal in all states, even those that have some of those that have sports betting just in general. So let's quickly explain what's going on here. So, Alex, what is an NFL draft prop bet?
Yeah, NFL draft prop bet. You're essentially betting on where a player is potentially selected. There's various types and categories like we have across for games. You can bet on how many wide receivers are drafted in round one, how many running backs are drafted in round one, over under for positions. So yeah, just the different various outcomes that in the NFL draft, you can now bet on what player will land on said team, what player will get picked at said selection. So lots of different options and lots of different angles you could potentially find value and exploit.
And Josh, I don't know what your experience is with betting on the NFL draft, but how important do you think it is to have a very holistic view of what's going on, a very complete view? You talked some about totals. You could draft not just, how many quarterbacks go in the first round, but how many Big Ten players go in the first round or things like that. So to have that top to bottom knowledge of all the guys that could go in the first round, all the mock drafts you do with the team, how important do you think it is to kind of know front and back who these guys are, to kind of know what to expect, especially once you get later in the first round?
Well, it's incredibly important because it gives you some opportunities to take advantage of maybe some value that's on the board. And to go even a step farther, you have to have a working knowledge of what's going on in the NFL in general. So when Kirk Cousins signed with Atlanta, the odds of Atlanta taking a quarterback in the first round dipped significantly because they're likely no longer in the market. Whereas you may have seen a team like Minnesota or Denver, their odds shift up to take a quarterback, especially after the Vikings traded for an additional second round pick. So everything is about accumulating information and just trying to apply it in the best way to potentially allow you to win some bets.
And you talk about accumulating information. I think that takes us to our next point, which is why can you bet on the NFL draft? You can bet on NFL games because you don't know what's going to happen. You might know team strengths and all, but teams are competing on the field. So it's this kind of random event that you can put odds on. But this is a bet about information, and information at a certain point is going to get 100%. You would never see in an NFL game a minus 5,000 result, but Caleb Williams is minus 5,000 to go number one overall. So based on the info you get, info is imperfect for 99% of the draft. I mean, it's not going to apply outside of number one, really, and it doesn't crystallize really till the last day or two. But you look at what states offer. Some states prohibit draft betting. I don't think it's in New York or Pennsylvania, Virginia. I think Connecticut and Rhode Island are the other two, but there's a few states where you can't do it. Some have rules you shut it down 24 hours before round one. I think Vegas is one of those places in Nevada where they'll take bets until 24 hours before the first round starts. Some allow a little more. Massachusetts, Michigan, you can bet on what the pick will be, like 2 picks before it happens. So if you're on the 6th pick of the draft, you can bet on pick 8, I believe, before the 6th pick happens. So it really just varies state by state. It's not something that is consistent all the way down, and the different states are kind of hit or miss on what they will offer. So that part of it's interesting to me. Alex, how good are the books, do you think, at setting odds, specifically early in this process?
Yeah, I think early on you'll find some value depending on obviously the category we're attacking. Obviously, this is a fluid process. The majority of my bets are going to be closer to when the draft approaches, as information changes on a daily basis. But one thing I would want to relay to our listeners is that the sports books use the NFL draft, or any draft really, to identify advantage players. It's one of the easier ways to get limited on a sports book is by showing that you have an edge betting draft props. So it is something I like to bet. It isn't something I like to necessarily make large positions and wagers on, because frankly, one wager could ultimately get you limited on a sports book. So just something to remember when drafting or when taking these draft props.
And it's interesting you say you like going later. I kind of like earlier because I think the books are just going by common info. And if you can drudge up some things that in different positions you can take that are outside of the consensus, which I believe the consensus is kind of overweighted to where the odds state and people just kind of buy into that, you can get some good value on some longer shots. We had Trey Lance at Sportsline to go number 3 while everybody was still talking about Mac Jones, just thinking that if the San Francisco is trading up for a quarterback stylistically, that seemed to be like the guy you would go get rather, and pay 3 first-round picks. So we had that, I think, 40-1, 45-1, something like that. Alex, what do you got?
I would just add to that, RJ. I would say depending on the category, there are certain categories that I like to attack early when the line's open, and there's categories that I like to attack, as we approach the actual draft. So I would say I spread my bets out between right when the line's open and then right prior to the draft beginning.
Good stuff. Okay, now that we've kind of got the explainer out the way, we're going to move on to the biggest name out there, the odds to go number 1 overall. I'm looking at this, and it looks like Caleb Williams is up to minus 8,000. I said 5,000 earlier, so you got to bet $80 to win $1. That should tell you the likelihood of him going number 1. Josh, is this kind of locked up at this point, or is there any chance at all that somebody else works their way into this conversation?
The only way that I don't think it's locked up is in the event that Caleb Williams has some kind of a medical issue that we're unaware of, because he only shared that with a few teams. So only a few teams will be privy to that information. But to me, I think he's the best quarterback in this draft class. And from everything that I have heard, Chicago is leaning in that direction and has been for at least a month.
If let's say the medicals don't check out, and let's just say he's off the board for Chicago for whatever reason, who do you think would be the number 1 guy for them?
I think it would be Drake May. I think he is slowly starting to cement himself as that second quarterback prospect in this draft class. I know some people may look at the dual threat capabilities of Jaden Daniels, but I think Drake May has a skill set that would more easily translate to the NFL game if he were to have to start today.
So Drake May we're seeing is 40-1 to go number 1 overall. Alex, do you think there's any value in that, or is it just Caleb Williams is so locked in, don't even bother?
I personally feel that it's Caleb Williams is locked in. I don't see really any value as far as the number 1 pick is concerned. I think the draft really begins at the 2nd pick.
Yeah, I'm on board with that too. I mean, there's nothing I'm really doing with the number 1 pick. I think we know, obviously, the Bears are going with the quarterback after they traded Justin Fields, and Caleb Williams, all indications are it's going to be him. Maybe we'll get some buzz, like Josh is saying, about medicals at some point. But without that happening, I don't think you can even make a small play on a guy like Drake May to go number 1. So kind of with you guys there.